I got the biggest shock of my life when I was 38 years old. My husband and I had just moved back to Raleigh, North Carolina from New York City. We were planning on taking our decades of experience in the food and drink business and opening a pizzeria. We had the investors, we had the business plan, we were ready to go. One afternoon, though, it dawned on me that I hadn't had my period yet, so it wasn't that strange. Being 38, my periods had already become a little bit weird. You know, some of my periods were going 12 days, some of my periods were 4 days. And so I thought I was going into menopause. I thought I just skipped a period. But just to be sure, I took a pregnancy test. And y'all, when I got that positive, you could have knocked me over with a feather. I was by myself, and I'm also from Eastern North Carolina, and we are known for emoting real loud. I was in such shock, my body took over, and I ran outside the front door into the yard shouting, "No way! No way!" and pacing back and forth in the front yard. I know, it's not a classy moment, but it's exactly what happened. My mind was running a mile a minute. What was going to happen now? Pregnancy, labor, delivery, post-baby. What could I expect? I wasn't expecting on becoming pregnant. In fact, my husband and I had tried to have a baby for 13 years. We just thought we weren't going to do it. And the idea that this was happening, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. What was going to happen to my body? What changes were in store for me? I know most women also wonder these things. I'm not alone in that. So today, I'm diving headfirst into the post-baby body. What happens right after you have a baby? And then years later, what changes are in store? I'm with Dr. Jessica Schloesser. She's an OBGYN with WakeMed, and we're talking post-baby body today. Yes. And you're pregnant right now, so this is something, and you said it's your third time.
It is.
So you're very familiar with this on a medical level and on a personal level.
Very much so.
Okay, well, let's just get started. The way I wanted to talk about this today was the immediate effects of having a baby have on your body and then moving out from there, right? So when you have a baby, your body changes so fast it's nuts.
It does.
Yeah, and when I was pregnant, I called myself a walking emergency. I'm like, I'm a walking medical emergency. And I just felt like my body, like I was a pair of eyeballs and my body was just changing all around me. Like I felt like everything got bigger and weirder. So anyway, so as you get through pregnancy and you finally, quote, get your body back, you kind of don't. So
you don't.
What are some things you can expect when you first come out of delivering your child?
Well, typically you're dealing with perineal lacerations.
What does that mean?
That means like tearing after delivery or during delivery.
I was told that I tore a 3.
A 3rd degree.
And so let's talk about that. What are the degrees of tearing that can happen?
1st through 4th. 1st being the most superficial tear. 4th being a tear all the way through the rectum.
So it's from hole to hole.
Correct.
And is it common?
It is common to tear. Typically, 2nd degrees are the most common.
And what does a 2nd degree mean?
It's through like the first 2 tissue layers.
Okay. Oh, God. So a 3 was pretty bad.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, I did give birth to a 9.8-pound baby.
That is a big baby.
It was but he was a turkey. Still is a turkey.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else can you expect?
Bleeding for up to 6 weeks after delivery. So like the longest period of your life, really.
Great. Looking forward to it. I'm sure
Yes.
you're ready for that.
Lack of core strength. You tend to lose all of your core strength during pregnancy. So then you're walking around not feeling like you have any abdominal muscles and you don't realize how much you use them until then. Your breasts get larger, get more sore.
Yeah, because you're lactating.
Yes.
And there's also hemorrhoids too,
Yes.
right, from pushing.
Well, some women get hemorrhoids during pregnancy, and then
is it just from pressure?
It is. It's from the pressure, and that our blood volume increases by nearly 50% whenever we're pregnant. So then we're just circulating more blood in general, and so.
How do you know you have a hemorrhoid?
Typically pain or rectal bleeding.
Yeah.
That presents itself during pregnancy, and then it can be made worse during delivery, and then they typically will. Not resolve completely, but at least the symptoms get better after delivery because the pressure's gone.
Yeah, thank God. That's good.
Yes.
I remember one of the first things I did after giving birth was tie my shoes. Like
Oh,
I
yeah.
bent down and I was like, yes.
Yes.
It's such a good feeling to do again. Let's talk about our boobs and how they change.
Yeah. So they in the beginning of pregnancy, that can be one of the first signs of pregnancy, is that your nipples can be more sensitive, your breasts get tender, and then they can enlarge during pregnancy. Your areolas, which are the darkened part around your nipples, they get bigger and darker.
That was unexpected to me when
Yeah.
I was pregnant. I was like, what is happening here? Why is that?
Well, it is whenever a baby's born, their vision is very poor. And so that darkening there is to help guide the baby to your breast.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool. And then anything else that can happen to your boobs? Just sore and your nipples are dark?
Well, they get a lot bigger after delivery whenever
Yeah.
they
Your milk
fill with
comes
milk.
in.
Yes. You can get engorged, where they basically feel like two bowling balls on your chest.
Pleasant, yes.
Yes. You can get infections. But yeah.
We're going to have a lactation episode. We'll get into all the nitty gritty of that. I remember right after having my son, the third day people warned me about the weepies. Is that
Yes,
something?
the baby blues.
Yeah, talk
Yes,
about that.
They start anywhere between like days 4 and 14 postpartum, and basically you just can cry at anything and everything.
Yeah, that's what I did. And I remember it felt almost like, it didn't feel like I was crying in a normal way. It almost felt like water. Like, it's hard to
Interesting.
explain how it felt. It just was like, it's almost refreshing.
Yeah.
And that is because of why.
All the hormone release that we do, that we
And
go
where do they
through.
come out? My tears?
Just in your body, but yeah,
they
you just release just that that release of emotion and sleep deprivation and things. And
Oh, yeah. Let's not even get into that.
Yeah.
Well, one thing a lot of people are really afraid of, and I did have, was postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. Talk about that.
So it affects I cannot remember the exact statistics, but it's fairly common.
Has that changed in recent years? Because I feel like when my mom's generation, you never heard about postpartum depression. And then all of a sudden in my generation, it seems like everybody has postpartum depression. So I doubt that the incidences of it has gotten more. The awareness of it, I would imagine, has gotten better.
The awareness has definitely gone up.
And has it taken the medical establishment by surprise that it's so common, or did they already know and they were just like, oh, well, it's just women. We don't care.
I think it probably took the medical community by surprise, because we expect that women, like, this transition into motherhood is supposed to be this easy, natural thing, and it's really not.
Yeah, it's not. Like, that's what I don't think that a lot of people understand, especially men, is that, we were the same as you. We were out at parties.
Yes,
We were in college. We were
yes.
having good times. And all of a sudden, we did the same thing. We got to where we are together.
Yes.
And then your life gets to go on normally. And our life is just like, oh, wow, not only am I walking medical emergency, then I do the most physically active thing I've ever done in my life, and then I don't get to sleep for 6 months afterwards.
Exactly. I think one of the things is, like, yes, there are women that are clinically depressed and clinically anxious and require medication, but I think it's also just realizing that this transition is hard, and it's okay to feel grief and sadness for your previous life while also loving your baby and loving this new phase of life.
Yeah, but some women don't even connect to their babies, I hear.
True.
It's a whole thing. So what are the signs of postpartum?
Signs of postpartum depression, one, it can be the extremes of sleep, like not sleeping at all versus wanting to sleep all the time.
Okay.
Not wanting to eat, not feeling attached to the baby, having feelings of guilt and hopelessness.
Yeah. Rage. I had rage.
Yes, rage can be a thing as well. Anger. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that one thing that happened to me, which was very unexpected because I had to be induced, was my brain. And I find out later this is normal. At the time, I did not know this, but my brain had me convinced that if I was a cave lady and was giving birth and needing to be induced, I would have died, and there was no way I would have been able to survive. And my son couldn't latch, and so I was just like, if I was born in their time, I would have died through this. And for some reason, that mattered so much. It's like none of this stuff makes sense in your brain. And I hear later that crazy thought pattern and thought process was all because of postpartum depression. Is this something that you come across?
I think women, if their birth experience doesn't go the way they planned or the way they hoped, then I think that does kind of set them up for some risk for depression after delivery.
Yeah. I also had a experience, and you said that I'm moving backward again to the bleeding that happens after you have a baby. So you said you can bleed for how long again?
Up to 6 weeks sometimes.
Yeah. And then I woke up one day and I bled a lot, like a whole lot. And that, like, to the point, I called it a bloodbath, basically.
Yeah.
I woke up and it was, everything was blood everywhere. And that's nothing to worry about.
Well, that's a little much, I think.
Maybe I should have called somebody.
Maybe.
I survived.
Yeah. We usually say a pad an hour for 2 or more hours is too much.
Well, it was overnight. Who knows? It was not a happy day, but I survived it. Thank God. I wish I had known you then. Anyway, back to the questions I have here. 6 to 8 weeks. Let's move on out. Let's move out. So right after, these are all the terrible things you can deal with, but you do heal really quickly.
Mostly. Yeah, I would say like your laceration heals and the bleeding stops and may or may not you'll lose a portion of the weight. Like that typically does happen fairly quickly. But.
Okay, so when you're 6 to 8 weeks post giving birth, what can I expect at that point?
Well, that's typically whenever you go in for your postpartum visit, and your physician or midwife, whomever you see, will do an exam to make sure that you have healed, that your laceration has healed, and that your uterus has gone back to a normal size. It takes about 6 weeks for your uterus to go back to being its normal size.
Which is incredible because it was the size of a watermelon before. It was incredible.
It's like 20-fold bigger.
And is there anything you can do to speed up that process?
Not really.
No, like not
drink breastfeeding. Breastfeeding can help with that.
Well, what if you can't breastfeed?
Then it will happen naturally on its own.
Okay.
It's not something that's required.
Okay. All right. And so when does your period come back?
That varies woman to woman. If you choose to formula feed, it may come back before your postpartum visit, or anytime thereafter. If you choose to breastfeed, then it can happen. It can happen anytime. Some women have to completely stop breastfeeding before their period comes back.
And why is that?
Because the way that milk production works inhibits ovulation.
Okay, so the old adage that you can't get pregnant while you're breastfeeding, is that true?
It is to an extent. If you are exclusively breastfeeding, which is what's recommended in the first 6 months, then it is 95% effective.
But I can already hear people like choking on their coffees because it was like, I have 2 babies in the back.
Yes, yeah, that's not the case for everyone. Now, like with my first delivery, mine came back before my postpartum visit, and I still breastfed for 15 months.
Okay.
But with my second, it didn't come back until I was 10 months postpartum. So it even varies pregnancy to pregnancy.
And do you think that's like hormone levels?
Yeah, but it's not something that we would like generally check or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, I'm just curious as to why one would be so vastly different than the other. What about birth control? Let's just say you don't want an Irish baby, an Irish twin is what they call it, or a Catholic twin. When is it safe to restart taking birth control?
It varies by method. Anything that's progestin only, so your IUDs, the depot shot, those types of things, they can be started immediately postpartum.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Sometimes we will give the depot shot before you go home from the hospital.
Oh, wow. You're like, you're welcome.
Yes, exactly. Anything with estrogen in it, though, we do recommend until waiting at least 6 weeks.
Why is that?
Estrogen can increase your risk for blood clots.
Okay.
So, and you're already at increased risk for blood clots after delivery.
Okay.
And so we wait 6 weeks for that.
Okay. What about sex? When can you start having sex again?
So we typically recommend waiting until that postpartum visit at 6 to 8 weeks, because we want the bleeding to stop. We want the laceration site to heal. Now, some patients will start before then.
Yeah.
And I would say, I mean, if you're not having pain, you're not bleeding,
go for it.
Go for it.
Right.
But be aware that pregnancy can occur.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Well,
what about the pain? Let's say it's 8 weeks. Let's say we're at the longer end of it and it's 8 weeks and you still have pain. When should I go see a doctor about that?
So I think that if everything has healed and you're having pain, I typically say give it a few times, see if things get better. Because sometimes you're like everything's still kind of tightening up, and it's also like relearning how to carry your body in a
non-pregnant way.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. A more neutral position.
Yeah.
And so if the pain doesn't get better within like, I don't know, a month after that, I usually say come back and see your physician or your midwife and talk to them about like pelvic floor physical therapy, which I think you've talked about on here too.
Well, let's talk about that because I think it's a rather new thing. I gave birth 8 years ago and I had pain from that and no one mentioned it.
It is a new thing, but it is a wonderful thing. I've had so many women have good success with it, but it's really learning, again, neutral position for your pelvis, strengthening those muscles that you stretch during pregnancy and during labor. And from what I personally have not experienced it, probably need to do it after this delivery, but it's like a full body kind of experience of kind of carrying your body and like posture and things like that.
Interesting. Yeah. Is it ever too late to start it?
It is not.
Okay, and you can get benefits even if it's years out.
And one thing I do recommend to my patients too is doing something that's newer is doing a postpartum like workout recovery plan. That may help without having to do the formal physical therapy, but doing a postpartum workout plan that focuses on strengthening your core, strengthening your pelvic floor, and not jumping right back into whatever you were doing pre-pregnancy, but really kind of taking the time to...
You meaning workout-wise?
Workout-wise, yes.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I thought you were about to say it's a postpartum workout plan so you can start losing that weight, which I think is one thing that society does to us as women, expects us, to bounce back. I had my kid at 38. Let me tell you, I'm still not back to where I was. I don't think I'll ever be back to where I was. Yeah, that's a whole nother topic, really. Does the age, speaking of the fact I was what was once referred to as a geriatric pregnancy that my gynecologist told me, he was like, we used to call this geriatric pregnancy. So I was like, you just did.
Yeah. I'm in that boat with you this time.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
It is.
So... Well, then you can speak to this personally as well as medically. How does it differ from a pregnancy, like recovery-wise? How does it? Well, you haven't recovered yet, but what are the things that people who have a baby older can expect versus a younger mother?
There are medical complications that come with being older in pregnancy, and then you're at risk for more things postpartum, like preeclampsia and things like that. But from like a recovery standpoint, obviously our metabolism goes down as we get older, and so it can be harder to lose the weight.
Shocking. That's news to me.
Yeah. I lost it very quickly after my first. My second, it took me about 2 years.
Let's go long term now, speaking of, because we did mention a second ago. I was 38 and I'm never going to get, is it possible for me to ever get back to where I was before I got pregnant?
I think you find a new normal. I don't know that you really ever go back to what you were beforehand. Yeah. Your body is completely changed.
Well, let's talk about what changes. First of all, my feet are a different size. Is that normal? And why?
I think like I really don't know, honestly, but I would assume with the added weight, there may be some flattening of your feet that could make them grow bigger.
Yeah. Has yours changed? Because this is your third child.
It is. Not drastically. Huh.
I went up half a size.
Yeah. I would say I still am between two sizes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I swore, and my doctor laughed at me, and when I told him this, but I swore my nose got bigger.
Oh.
While I was pregnant, and I don't feel like it went back. Is that something you encounter?
I have not encountered that before.
Really?
Yeah.
Darn it. I didn't make it up, I swear.
I believe you.
Okay. Let's talk about hair.
Yes.
Because I know that some women get like clumps of hair coming out. What's going on with our hair during and after pregnancy?
The medical term is called telogen effluvium.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's when more of your hair falls out at one time. And part of that is because most women experience
luscious
hair growth.
Yeah, luscious
pregnancy.
Pantene hair.
Exactly. And so our hair is in 3 phases. It's in a growing phase, it's in just a steady phase, and then it's in a falling out phase. And so during pregnancy, that all slows down, and there's more hair that's just in the
hanging out phase. So that's why it's so thick and pretty.
Yes, exactly. And then after that it continues in that cycle, so then you have more in the falling out phase.
So you're going through all these weepy hormones, your hair's falling out,
Yes.
your feet have gotten bigger, you're bleeding like crazy. It's good times.
Yes,
good
your
times
boobs
all
get
around.
big and then they deflate. And
Yeah. Yeah. Being a woman's so easy.
It is.
What long term And I guess we can digress a bit here too. As far as your skin goes, what can happen to your skin before and after pregnancy? And like in terms of things that probably won't go away.
You can get some melasma, which is those dark spots on your face that sometimes don't go away after pregnancy. And
Is that the pregnancy mask?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the brown spots, and it kind of can be in a mask type distribution.
And why does that show up?
Honestly, I don't know. I know it's a hormonal thing, but I don't know the.
You don't know the reason why, like
no, I'd have to read
evolutionary
about
speaking?
it. Yeah.
I gave you a research project.
You did.
Does the type of delivery that you have, like C-section, induction, pushing, forceps, are they called forceps? That's like the big tongs that you go in.
Yes.
So can that affect what happens to your pelvic floor after pregnancy?
Yes and no. Generally, pregnancy in general can affect your pelvic floor. Studies have shown that there's no difference in some aspects from C-section versus vaginal delivery as far as the weakening of the muscles.
Okay.
Obviously, there can be incontinence as a result of pushing for long periods of time, having a forceps delivery that it brings, like, you have a more severe tear, that sort of thing. That is not as much of an issue with a C-section.
I see. But then you have, like, what's the recovery like for someone who did have a C-section? Because, I mean, isn't that like you guys gave it like you go through 7 layers, right?
We do, yeah. It's major abdominal surgery.
Yeah, and so what's the recovery process period, and what can you expect?
We still say about 6 to 8 weeks for that as well.
Okay.
For everything to heal. We are a lot more proactive in our recovery nowadays than what we were 10 to 15 years ago. We get patients up and walking within 12 hours after surgery. We get their Foley
Even
catheters.
with that huge incision.
Yeah. Studies have shown it helps with post-operative pain. It helps with decreased nausea and
Interesting. I mean, do you think that's got to do with blood flow?
Yeah, blood flow. And I think because with surgery, there's so much gas in your abdomen that comes in whenever you open it. Obviously, it opens it to air.
I've never thought about that.
Yeah, you can get it out, and just it helps with pain control.
Oh, God.
And mobility in general helps with recovery.
That sounds awful. I feel bad for anybody who had a C-section. Do you have to? My mom had me in the 70s, and she had my brother because he was trying to come out butt first.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, and then she had to have me via C-section. Is that still true that you still have to have a C-section if you ever have one?
In most cases, no. In most cases, you can try for a vaginal delivery if you have the right type of C-section for that. There's a transverse incision on the uterus, like a horizontal incision.
Okay.
If we do that type of incision on your uterus, then you can have a vaginal delivery afterwards.
Let's talk about if you want to have another baby. It's been 6 to 8 weeks. We're like a year out at this point. And you want to have another baby. And you haven't really moved out of your postpartum phase of recovery. Like you're like a year in and you're still like feeling some things are not the same. Maybe your hips are not, because my hips took a long time to get back to normal. Do these things compound if you have baby after baby after baby after baby? Like, are you just a wreck by the end of it?
I don't know if I'd say a wreck, but yes, I do tell patients that
people never do it.
I do tell patients that each pregnancy is subsequently more uncomfortable. Like, I feel like,
oh, really?
Yeah, especially if you don't do the repair work in between.
Because I've heard it's easier when you have more than one kid.
Yeah, I would disagree.
You know what I heard in that sigh? I heard experience is what I heard in that sigh.
Yes, each one has been a little more uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Pregnancy tends to sit lower down, further out, because your abdominal wall is not as strong as it used to be.
I see.
And so you just put more strain on your low back, more strain on your pelvis.
It's making me think of those TLC shows where they've got like 30 kids. I'm thinking way differently of those moms at this point.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to do some listener questions now.
Okay.
I have not seen these.
Okay.
Does your belly button ever go back to normal?
I'm
Be
not
honest.
Sure. I know. I mean, if you have a hernia, then no, that usually has to be surgically corrected. You can get a hernia during pregnancy.
Okay. That makes sense because you're so stretched out.
Yes.
And a hernia is, for people who are not really sure what that is.
It's like a weakening of your abdominal wall.
Yeah. Okay.
Or like right at your belly button.
Okay.
I feel like if you can tighten your ab muscles back, then usually it goes back to normal.
Okay. All right. So there's that. That's good to know. Next question. I have a numb area above my C-section scar that has never gone away. I've had 2 C-sections 3 years apart. The most recent one was 18 years ago. Is it normal to still have this numbness?
It is. Whenever we do a C-section, we cut through a lot of superficial nerves, and they don't always grow back. And whenever they don't grow back, you can have that numbness there. Yeah.
All right, this is a long one. Every single source hits moms with a quote-unquote bounce back. Even baby tracking apps are starting to put push notifications. I can feel my anger rising in this moment.
Oh my gosh.
Push notifications about workouts and getting your body back in shape when fundamentally it'll never be the same. Why is there a push to quote bounce back when we are already going through so much physically and emotionally? That's the $1 million question.
Yes.
It's all on you. What's your answer?
I don't have a good one.
Yeah, right? What do you tell your patients?
I think that recovery looks different for everyone. I think that exercise looks different depending on what phase of life you're in. It may just be moving in the yard with your toddler. It may be getting up and going to the gym every morning. It just varies. And I think it's learning to accept that things are going to be different and trying to find what works for you.
No, I think it might be why women are viewed as much more emotionally mature, because we're having to go through these roads that men don't typically have to go down. Men's bodies change, but it's slow.
It is.
Ours will change drastically in a 10-month period.
Yes.
And so we're having to get through our heads that bodies change,
right?
Which for some reason, for the human race, it's really hard to accept.
It is. I mean, it's really like 2 years, I think, to get back to, no, not even to get back, but to find your new normal, to like, especially if you breastfeed or like, and it took a year for my children to sleep through the night. So I wasn't getting adequate rest for the first year.
Yes.
And so I think, it's a good 2 years, I think, before.
Yeah. And for someone like me who wasn't able to breastfeed, the bounce back every time, like, well, if you breastfeed, you'll get back to normal. I'm like, I can't breastfeed.
Right.
And it made me so crazy because it made me feel like I was not doing my job as a mother, that I was doomed to be in a body that never had a chance to come back. And it was just this horrible feeling that I couldn't do it.
I think society puts a lot of unrealistic and unneeded pressure on women to breastfeed. However your baby is fed, that works for your family is what's best.
I gotta say, thank God for formula is all I gotta say.
Exactly.
Thank God. Well, those are all our questions. They weren't that bad. You got lucky because some of these have been real bad. In the best way. Well, I never really heard all the changes we go through as moms spelled out that way. And they call us the weaker sex. Please. No one mentions that while all this monumental change is happening, that we're still holding down a job, running a household, and for some women, raising other small humans. Y'all, Beyonce had it right. Girls run the world. To share your thoughts on this episode or send me a question for a future episode, go to WRALFM.com/Sarah Has Questions. The link's in the show notes, by the way. Sarah Has Questions is a production of Capital Broadcasting Company. My guest today was Dr. Jessica Schloesser, an OBGYN with WakeMed. To find out more about her or any of the other providers from WakeMed, go to wakemed.org. Thanks for listening.